One. Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi, taking care of business on Canada's podcast network. My guest today is Christopher Alexander, president of RE/MAX Canada. Thanks, Chris, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Mario. Good to see you again.
Nice seeing you again. And so a really interesting report put out today by RE/MAX on the condo market in Canada. And the share of that market is growing throughout the country and in basically all the markets. Tell me why that's happening.
Well, what I find fascinating about the numbers is that it's really kind of mirroring what happened in the 2017 slowdown when you had dramatically rising prices in the freehold sector. And so, detached, semi-detached were, just flying off the shelves and prices were going up by double digits. And then things pulled back. The government introduced some measures and purchasing power was diminished. And that's really what we're seeing again today with rising interest rates and, a lack of or diminished buying power. So people are turning to condos in a big way. And the rental market for apartments is on fire. And so you've got this kind of storm of people really want to own real estate in Canada. We've got one of the highest home ownership rates in the world. We're just about 65% of people in Canada own homes. And they're finding ways to do that. And if they can't afford the freehold, they're looking at condos. And it's really been a big winner over the past 10 months.
And can you talk a little bit about the markets out there? Is this happening everywhere, or are we making the assumption it's just the big city markets like Toronto and Vancouver?
Well, it's Alberta, particularly Calgary and Edmonton, are really seeing strong sales and price appreciation. I mean, Calgary's sales are up almost 65% year over year in the city, and prices have gone up about 6%. Edmonton sales are up not quite 65%, but their prices are up double digits. So, Alberta is really, feeling some strong, increases in both those sectors. Also, Atlantic Canada, namely Halifax, is attracting a lot of demand for condominiums. And then, of course, Toronto and Vancouver are what they are. And, those are two cities that can't really build out anymore. They're just going up. So lots of condos to be had there.
Well, we're talking about Calgary and Edmonton. I'm just curious. There's been a lot of talk over the last, couple of years anyways or so about the affordability factor when it comes to Alberta compared to, say, a Vancouver or a Toronto. And you're looking at, like single family homes, for instance, like probably half the price, right? In these Alberta cities. Are you seeing a lot of the Ontario buyers, especially, coming out to Alberta because of that affordability factor?
Yes, and from British Columbia. So Alberta is seeing a huge immigration from those two provinces. And, Calgary's average sale price is, half of Toronto's, and Edmonton is only 380 and change. And so, you're only in Edmonton specifically, your income to housing ratio is only about 30 to 35%. So you've got really low cost of housing, lots of disposable income, and it's which is great for the local economy because people are continuing to spend on going out for dinner and events and shopping and things like that. I mean, we're still seeing a lot of that in British Columbia and Ontario, but people are a lot more conscious on what they spend, especially in this high inflationary market. So Alberta is so attractive to so many people because it's half the price, sometimes even less. Mm-hmm. It offers a great quality of life, and the local economy is starting to diversify, and which to me is great. And I'm personally very bullish on that province because it's been so dependent on oil for so long, and it still is. but we're seeing big investments in other sectors, namely technology, which is attracting a lot of people as well.
Yeah, it certainly is. Now let's talk a little bit more about condos in general. Um, do you foresee this trend to continue as we continue to live in this high inflationary environment and the rising interest rates, does the condo market become even more attractive to people?
Well, the bottom line is people in Canada want to own real estate. They see it as a long-term safe investment vehicle. They believe in the security of it over the long haul as well. And we've got a supply challenge in this country,
Yeah.
especially in the freehold sector. And I can see condos performing very, very well for the majority of the foreseeable future. And the holy grail for most home buyers is still a detached home with a yard, especially if you've got a family and young children or a dog. That's the pinnacle for most people.
Yeah.
So, but if you can't afford that, you're probably looking at a condominium or it's lifestyle thing. I mean, for so long, well, right up until the pandemic, and this is coming back now, you have a lot of boomers that, had a lot of equity in their homes because they bought 30 years ago. And then they're moving into condominiums in urban centers for lifestyle. They want to be close to the theater. They want to be close to shops and restaurants, and they want to be able to walk to get groceries and do those things. And so I see that, as a factor contributing to high sales as well, because for 2.5 years, people were nervous about showing their homes, going into elevators with other people and condo buildings when there's a virus going around. So condos really suffered during the pandemic, but they're coming back in a big way.
The other thing too, I guess to consider, and fairly recently there was news about this, is Canada's population growth, right? And a lot of that is fueled by immigration, and so the levels of immigration are rising. In terms of home ownership, well, first of all, we know most newcomers tend to gravitate towards a rental, housing, rental housing. But if they're so inclined, I guess condos are an easy gateway into the home ownership, right?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned rentals, Mario, and that is actually kind of concerning. Like some markets are up 25% plus year over year in prices. It's unbelievably competitive. A lot of that, in my opinion, is due to a lack of consumer confidence right now and the overall picture because of all the negative headlines in the news, plus consistently rising interest rates. I mean, we all knew that, sub 2% was fantasy land and that was going to come to an end, but the government is really, aggressive on trying to curb inflation. And their one tool that they've been acting on is rising rates. And so that's causing concern for people. So they're thinking, I don't know what this is going to look like. I'm probably just going to rent for a while. But now rental prices are getting to the point where it's cheaper to buy from a monthly cost perspective, a monthly carrying cost. So,
yeah.
I think that is also feeding into some of the bounce back we've seen in the freehold sector. I mean, by no means are we anywhere close to what we saw in the last couple of years, but even that was fantasy land. I'm repeating my terminology here, but really, between the low interest rates and, average days on market less than 2 weeks, like that's just not normal. And so, we're back to a lot of normalcy now, and people are really focused on what they can afford in the condo sector. That's benefiting from that in a big way because it's much more affordable. And obviously rental, if that is an appealing decision for a lot of people too, if they are nervous about the marketplace.
Yeah, and I guess too, for the condo market provides a springboard, I guess, right, for the future, right? As people build, they can afford to get into the condo market, they build equity, right? And then when the timing is right for them, they can make that move into sort of the dream of a single family detached home.
Well, my philosophy has always been it's more about time in the market as opposed to timing it. I don't know anybody that's really successfully timed the market when it comes to real estate. It's much more common in the stock market, but even that's uncommon. So yeah, I mean, if you're thinking of buying and you can afford to buy today and you can hold on to the property for several years, you're going to do well. We've got a housing shortage problem. I hate using the word problem, but it is a problem in Canada. And you've got, 1.2 million people projected to come to the country over the next 2.5, 3 years. So, you tell me we already have serious inventory challenges. I mean, despite even in the freehold sector, inventory is down year over year in a big way. And so you've got low inventory, high immigration, high local demand. That is a formula for rising prices sooner or later.
Yeah, super. Well, thanks very much, Chris, for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me, Mario.
All right, that was Christopher Alexander, who is president of REMAX Canada. I'm Mario Toneguzzi, taking care of business on Canada's podcast network. Thanks for joining us today.